hopefully, you just watched or listened to Father George Livonas discuss part 1, the journey through life in search of calling. If not, please go back and watch this critical foundation. Now, shortly, I'm going to interview Presvytera Dianthe Livonas as we focus on part 2 of this 3-part message that we call the moment after, the clarity of vision from the partner's perspective. And after this part 2, we'll re-engage with Father George to discuss part 3, the journey through death to the resurrection. In the meantime, please let me set the stage for part 2's focus on the moment after. Kathy Hull founded the first freestanding pediatric palliative care facility in the United States, the George Mark Children's House. And its mission is to give terminally ill children and their families a peaceful place to say goodbye. She stated that her critical conclusion was, and let me quote, ultimately, we cannot control how long we live, whether 85 or just 5 years. It's not by pretending that death doesn't exist that we keep the people that we love safe. In the end, what we can control is how we spend our days, the spaces we create, the meaning and joy we make. We cannot change the outcome, but we can change the journey, end quote. Now, what Father George and Presvytera Dianthe will help you understand is how you can change your journey while you still can. Elizabeth Lesser is a best-selling author and the co-founder of the Omega Institute, and in her first book, The Seeker's Guide, she actually detailed lessons that she learned at the Institute, which has really been a potent guide for growth and healing since every year they see more than 30,000 people in their programs. But she also was a midwife before she did that. And what she learned, and let me quote, each one of us comes into this world with a unique worth. Each birth in this world is a mashup of biology and ancestry and mystery. But see, as we grow and conform, we cover our souls in eccentricities or authenticities. Everyone watching or listening to this program is a former baby with a different birthright. But over time, many of us develop what Elizabeth Lesser calls ADD, not attention deficit disorder, but authenticity deficit disorder. We lose our authentic selves. But my brothers and sisters, not so for Father George Livonas, who is perhaps one of the most authentic teachers, preachers, and reachers you will likely ever encounter. Dr. B.J. Miller is a triple amputee and is now a palliative care physician. His whole life is devoted to caring for those dying very soon. And after decades of such experiences, he concluded in another fascinating TED Talk that I hope you get a chance to look at, that for most people, the scariest thing about death isn't being dead. It's dying. It's suffering. Palliative hospice care is all about comfort and living well at any stage, not just at the end of life. Father George Livonas is currently in hospice care. Indeed, we had to interrupt our recording of this program so that he could receive palliative care from his hospice nurse. But according to all of the data that Dr. Miller accumulated, people closer to death cared more about feeling unburdened and unburdening those that they love. He says that the research shows that at the end of life, it's all about existential peace and a sense of wonderment. And also, very importantly, he said, wait for it, spirituality. Yeah. The soon to die overwhelmingly are very focused on spirituality. But see, the trick is to have that focus before the end. Greek philosopher Epicurus said that fear of death is natural, but not rational. And he said something I think was great. He said, death is nothing to us, because when we are here, death is not. And when death is here, we are gone. And another author, Ludwig Wittgenstein, said, death is not an event in life. We do not live to experience death. Life is like a book, he postulates. It has a beginning and an end, just like book is bound by its covers, your birth and your death. But in the middle, it can encompass different landscapes and fantastic adventures and unique characters. It really knows no horizon and no limits. The only knowledge that we have is the moment we're in. The only thing that matters is what you make of that moment, and make a good story that fills the chapters of the story of your life. My brothers and sisters, this is what living a stewardship calling is all about, making the story of your life a good story you would proud to tell or have others tell after your passing. The reason why I walked away from a highly successful 36-year career serving in management global law firms was to be able to spend the rest of however many hours or days working for free, because St. Paul reminded us in Ephesians 4:1 to lead the calling to which we've been called. And the simple message is what living your stewardship calling is really all about: taking stock of all the gifts, experiences, resources, people, and stuff God's given you, and then decipher what he has in mind for you to do. Albert Einstein, when he was at the end of his life, concluded that our normal hamster wheel experience of life is just an illusion. We run around faster and faster trying to get somewhere. And all the while, underneath the surface, time is the whole other dimension. In time, the past, present, and future merge and become what he referred to at the end as deep time. Deep time is a time where there is no place else to be. He calls what it's like being in deep time and space as only being. And when he finally truly experienced only being, he said he fully understood sacred awe. What a powerful phrase, sacred awe. Now, it's not just Albert Einstein that experienced sacred awe. In Zorba the Greek, Nikos Kazantzakis has unnamed narrators say, and let me quote this: "I felt deep within me that the highest point man can attain is not knowledge or virtue or goodness or victory, but something even greater, more heroic, and more despairing. Sacred awe," end quote. In my dialogue with Father George and Presvytera Dianthe, you'll hear the sacred awe of which Mr. Einstein in Zorba spoke. The sacred awe of faith, the sacred awe of love, the sacred awe of caring and service for others, and the importance of turning your life over to the Lord and letting him guide it. Don't believe that it can't happen. Just listen to this compelling story of Presvytera Dianthe Livonas.
Well, it is an incredible pleasure and honor to welcome Presvytera Dianthe Livonas here to share a little bit different perspectives, maybe tell the other side of some stories that Father George told. But I also want to get into some other areas. When you and I were first talking, you said you thought of Father George as a crackpot, and I had to ask you carefully: are you saying a crackpot? And you said, no, cracked pot. And I thought, okay, now that makes that. I mean, I could see you could have gone either way with that part of the story over there, given some of what he's confessed to. But because we're all a little bit crazy. But I think when you lovingly connected the dots and explained to me why that story was so relevant, it made perfect sense to me. So I'm hoping that you will share with everyone else why you think of Father George as a cracked pot.
Well, I think, crackpot, cracked pot, that's kind of the same source, but we've always looked at that as being, a cracked pot is something worthless, useless. And just a little aside, there's a Japanese belief that that things that are broken, vessels that are broken, are actually valued. And they take these and they glue them together and they paint those cracks with gold, because it represents the struggle and the toil that our lives have experienced that caused these cracks and breaks. But they're to be celebrated, they're to be beautified rather than discarded and deemed as worthless. But the story that I was, referring to was something that I heard from Mount Athos. Obviously, I haven't been to Mount Athos, but the stories that come down, that a monk had gone to his elder for guidance, and the elder told him to take this cracked pot or a bucket that had holes in it. I'm sure it was a cracked pot. And to go to the well and to fill it with water and bring it back to fill the cistern so that they could have water to drink. And so it was his obedience to do this. And he took the pot and he filled it with water. He walked quite a distance, filled it with water, and walked it back to their keli. And by the time he reached their dwelling, the pot was empty. All the water had dripped out. And so he emptied whatever few drops were there and headed back to the well to fill it up again. And so he did this many, many, many times and was beginning to despair. He would never be able to fill the cistern. They would never have water to drink because, all of the water had dripped out. And so he went back to his elder and, shared his dismay. And the elder said, "Look back at the path that you've walked and tell me what you see." And sure enough, beautiful flowers had grown along the pathway because he had watered that path. And that's very much our Father George, and I think it's really the story of each and every one of us. We're all cracked pots. We all come with our baggage, our bruises, our bumps, our fears. And what makes the difference is our obedience and our willingness to just keep walking that path and doing what God has called us to do. And, eventually you look back and you see a beautiful story has been laid out before you. And, as the two of you have been talking all this time, and I've been listening and reminded of all the places we've been, all the things that we've seen and done. And it's just, it's an unreal story. And of course, hindsight is always 20/20. And I know that when we reach the heavenly kingdom, we will see even more clearly than what we see only in part now.
Yeah, and as you look back at the trail that both of you laid, in one level you see the flowers that bloomed in the churches, the communities, et cetera, et cetera. But as you just said, what you will not probably fully realize until you reach the heavenly kingdom is all of the other people who benefited from that, who you didn't see, who you didn't touch, but who were touched by those who you did touch, right? That ability to give of yourself, and in the giving of yourself that gives others the strength to give themselves to others, and on and on and on you go. So as you look back on the cracked pot journey that you and Father George have taken, what are some of the things that stand out in your mind? Because I suspect you've had some chances to reflect back on that recently.
All of these years we've been, we met 40 years ago, and we have been thicker than thieves since then, even with that little breakup.
Yeah, there's a story there that if you want a chance to rebut his story there or explain it, we want to make sure you have the opportunity to do so. You don't have to. I'm just saying we're going to give you the chance. It was sheer
stupidity. I was just really fearful. And, that's a little bit part of my story anyway. But God is good. I'm not as adept at jumping back into stories as my husband is, so I just lost my train of thought here. We were talking about
as you look back on the journey, yeah.
Yeah.
What are
all these years? I've had I've carried quite a lot, and I'm not trying to make myself look like a heroine or anything, but it's just a huge responsibility to be the wife of a priest and to have a large family. And as he mentioned, we took a lot of responsibility for our lives into our own hands. And I felt very, very convicted that as God gifted us these magnificent jewels, our children, that he has gifted us also the wisdom and the responsibility and the everything that we need to raise them. And I took that responsibility very, very seriously. So sometimes I think, God, was I that stupid? Like, no one person can do all the things that I've, tried to do. But again, it was just with conviction that that this was right and that God would give us the strength to do it. But so my head has always been down and, hands to the grindstone. And so my involvement in the parish has, I don't want to say been little. I think my involvement has been extreme, just in supporting my husband and encouraging him and listening to him when he comes home late at night and weary and hurting for the people, that I could comfort him and, be a sounding board, etc. But every day for me, and even still, even through all of this madness that we've experienced this past year, I'm totally a Martha, and I'm working and working and working, and so I haven't had the chance until very recently to stop and look at that path and see the flowers that are blooming and growing and thriving along the way. And it's very, very humbling.
It's got to be, and there also has to be a responsible but righteous thankfulness for the opportunity to have planted those seeds and grown those seeds and watered those seeds, etc., both in obviously the lives of your children and grandchildren, but even in the people within the community who your loving support of Father George allowed him to lovingly support them also. And I think that's got to be one of the callings that both of you feel right now, is you both look ahead with some trepidation, but you look behind it with some sense of accomplishment. So, y'all have been together. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to interject something about calling, if I may, because I think this is really a huge foundation. And just to share a little bit of my story, I was raised in a Greek family. I was baptized as a child. My father was a lawyer and a businessman, and was constantly, creating new businesses and had millions of ideas. But he had a deep wound himself. And so my life was very, very difficult. I won't elaborate on that, but I left home after high school directionless and really, really wounded. And I found myself in the arms of the church, kind of by default. I was not a churchgoer. I had no clue what the church was about. It was a social event, and one that I didn't really relate to. But I found myself at a college in Ohio, and the church was on the campus. And my oldest sister, who was 11 years older than me, attended that parish. And so she would call me and she'd say, "I'm going to be in church on Sunday. Why don't you come? And we'll go out to lunch afterward." And so I'd show up every now and then. And she'd say, Bible study is on Tuesday. Why don't you come? And, we'll get to see each other. And mind you, I didn't even have a relationship with her before that point. If anything, it was a little bit of a difficult relationship because given our age differences, she was my high school teacher when I was in high school. So,
oh my Lord.
She lived at home. So she would come home and tell my parents, Dianthe didn't have her sweater on today and she wasn't dressed appropriately or whatever. And, so
that's tough.
It was.
Yeah.
But she had a big heart and she loved me and really wanted the best for me. So she kind of led me back to the church. And so I got to know a lot of the students from campus also were Orthodox Christians that went to church there. So a couple of them said to me, you got to come to camp with us this summer. It's such a blast. We're going to go as counselors. Come along. And so I said yes, just because it was going to be a good time.
Yeah, I mean, why not? It's camp.
Yeah, it was. So I did that. And the following year, I signed up to do it again. And the director, who was then Damon Halkias of Pittsburgh, pulled me to the side. It was just the counselors that had come a couple days early for orientation. And he pulled me to the side and said, I need to talk to you. God has put you on my heart. And he told me that he has something very, very special in store for you. And I just want you to have your heart open this week and listen for his voice. And I looked at him like,
wait, how old were you at the time?
I was 19.
Okay. So that's a challenging message for a 19-year-old to hear, open your heart to the Lord because he's going to speak to you, right? I mean, that's not what every 19-year-old is thinking about generally.
Right. And quite honestly, it was just a foreign language. I thought he was nuts.
Yeah.
And I just dismissed him. I'm like, okay, yeah, and walked off. So a couple days into the camp week, we were in our cabin, and my co-counselor was a little bit more experienced than I. So she was leading the cabin talk, and I began to experience something horrible. I was having a demonic attack, which, of course, at the time, I had no clue what that was.
Yeah.
And I ran out of the room and was outside gasping for air. I felt as though I was being choked, literally. And so fast forward the story, that night, Damon sat with me and he prayed with me and he put a prayer rope in my hand for the first time ever, and put a Bible in my hand for the first time ever. And he said, tomorrow you have no responsibilities. I want you to just go sit in the chapel and I want you to pray and let God speak to you. Well, I was petrified, totally petrified. Yeah. I had no idea what was happening to me. And I knew even less what he was asking me to do. So I sat
what are you supposed to do if this is all foreign to you, right? I mean, when he says go and pray for a day, you kind of go, how do I do that, right?
Yeah. I had no clue what prayer was, literally. I mean, and, in a lot of ways, this kind of gives you an example of the naivete that my whole life has had. I didn't, when I was a high school in college, I'm completely tongue-tied. When I was a senior in high school, the counselor called me into the office to discuss with me what my plans for next year were. And I just kind of went, what's next year? Like, I just had no clue, because nobody was really mentoring me. Nobody was talking to me about my future, about who I am and what I have to offer. The skills that I had were diminished. My father very highly valued intellect. You needed to be an intellectual to be successful. And I was completely creative and a free spirit. And so that was highly looked down on. Anyway, so I'm just really naive about life and about, what our purpose is. So I'm in this chapel at camp, and I'm looking at the icons, I'm looking around, and I was like, okay, well, and this is literally how I was talking to God. I'm like, okay, God, I'm here. Damon told me to sit down and talk to you and listen to you. So if you've got something to say, I'm here and I'm listening. And in that little moment of silence, he spoke out loud to me in a voice that, like you and I can hear right now, each other. And he said, follow me. And I began to weep.
Wow.
And I said, okay, but I don't know what that means.
So you didn't have the scriptural context of that, right? I mean, that was just kind of
no, there was no scriptural context at all. But I'm gonna pause here for a second, because this is the whole point of what I'm getting at with what I'm sharing right now, is the willingness to say yes, the willingness to follow, even when we have no clue what it means or where that's going to take us.
Right.
And that naivete of mine, I think, has protected me in so many ways. So I said yes, and we went on with the day with the campers. And my co-counselor was talking with me. We're on our way to take the children to the pavilion for some general assembly. And neither of us had any idea what that assembly was about. But her brother was studying for the priesthood. And she, had asked me if I was, if I had ever considered Hellenic College. And I was,
oh, okay.
I had never heard of Hellenic College, but I was like, nope, no school. I am not interested in school. At this point, I didn't mention, I had dropped out of school. My father, who insisted that I attend college, that I have a degree, paid my tuition late every semester. And so I'd lose all of my courses. And after 3 semesters of that, I thought, this is pointless. I don't even want to be here. So I dropped out. And I was almost living on the street. I would not go back home. And I really was directionless. So she mentioned school, and I'm like, nope, no school for me.
Yeah, been there, done that, not going back, right?
Yes. So we get to the pavilion where this general assembly is taking place. And there's a man standing up front who I've never seen before. He wasn't one of the staff. And he's wearing a black robe. And I've never seen one of those before. So I'm a little puzzled. And he begins to introduce himself as a seminarian from Hellenic College, Holy Cross School of Theology, and he's here to tell us about the schools. And my co-counselor and I just look at each other like, are you kidding me? Like, we were just talking about this.
Yeah.
So inside of me, I'm thinking, oh, no, you don't.
Yeah. This is like you got sucked into a time-sharing presentation that you didn't really want to go to, right?
Right. So, he talks about the school, blah, blah, blah. It's like the Charlie Brown school scene where he's going, wah, 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 wah,
Right.
wah. The teacher's talking. And so he passes out a folder of information to each of the kids, and I get mine and open it up. And what do I see but this bumper sticker with huge letters filling the whole bumper sticker, "Follow me to HCHC."
Oh, no, really? Really?
Really, really.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
and I just said, "Oh, no, that couldn't be what you have in store." But again, I said, "But if this is what you're asking of me, you're going to have to open a lot of doors, because I can't imagine how I would get to Boston, how I would pay for school, who would support me. Like I'm almost on the street." And so I took it home with me, and I told my sister about it, and she and her husband were supportive. They thought it was a good idea. So we went and talked to the priest, and he thought it was a great idea. And he was such a generous man, Father George Bartz. And he said, I will treat you like one of our seminarians. We've supported a lot of students to go to the school, and you will be one of them. So he got me scholarships. And then Bishop Maximus, who was literally like a father to me, took me under his wing as well. And he said, "You have no worries. I will take care of you." And so I get to Hellenic College, and George Livonas is the first guy that I meet on campus.
Right. So now we're combining these two stories, right? So I got this visual image of this hulking guy from his description now stalking your car, because he spied you through the car, and now he's stalking your car, and he comes along the side, and according to him, he asks you if he can carry your books. Now I got to think there's something more to that story.
Yeah, well, that was pretty accurate.
Okay.
I remember sitting with our, she became our maid of honor, Christina Shaheen, now a Presvytera Ryman in California. And he had come running down the hill. "Christina, I got to talk to you." And she had experience. She had been there for a year with him. And she was like, "I haven't got time for you, George." She knew he had some sob story to share.
There was a scheme developing in his brain, right? And she knew what to do.
But that was the time that we met, and and so he introduced himself, and I said, "Well, I'll talk to you," and that just started a friendship that was amazing. And we were pretty much inseparable those first 2.5 years of my my stay at Hellenic College, which incidentally, I none of my credits from Akron University transferred, except for I think one English course. So I started from scratch, which I was not too pleased about. And I didn't want to be in school. I had no aspirations for anything. So I had two choices. I could pick the School of Education or social work. So I don't know. I just picked education. It was like flipping a coin. And I lost my train of thought.
You was like flipping a coin, but God said, "Just trust me, follow me. I got a plan for you here. You're going to be educating some kids before you know it."
Yeah, indeed. So I ended up graduating with only one small debt. The entire 4 years was paid for by donations and scholarships and God's holy grace. So again, I know, looking back now, that was very much his plan for me, and that he would unite me to a man who is, he's not just a priest, he is like what you see, what you've experienced, that is the man, morning, noon, and night. And he has been a healing balm for me, for my soul, for my life, and my children, and for so many faithful around us. Yeah.
That is such a wonderful and powerful and beautiful and loving sentiment. Would that all spouses would say that about their spouse. That's just incredible. Now, when some of us see Father George, we see him obviously in a different light. We either see him as priest or we see him as friend. I mean, I see him as this big old loving teddy bear, although he kind of, blew that out of the water with the championship wrestling, which I love too growing up. So, but none of us said I do to him 36 years ago, or the Greek Orthodox equivalent of that. So share with us, if you don't mind, a little bit of what it's been like living with him and your life together for these last 36 blessed years.
Well, I already told you that I came with a lot of baggage and a lot of bruises.
We all do. We all do. Yeah, it's okay.
We do.
We all do in our own way, right? I mean, And
part of that breakup between us when we were at Hellenic College still was because I was petrified. He said, others intervened. And yeah, they did, because I was, I invited it. That's the thing. I was scared. I was petrified of what was happening in my life, and I had no context for it.
Right.
The only
probably no feeling of control, like you felt like you couldn't control anything. It was all happening to you, right? I mean, wasn't that a part of it?
Yeah, it was. Except again, now looking back, I see, and I don't know how much of my story we'll share today, but it's been a story of saying, yes, I will follow you, even though I have no clue what that really means.
Right.
So when he took me out to dinner for my name day, that rainy night.
That rainy night in Boston.
The rainy night in Boston. I knew, even though this fight was still in me, I was afraid that he was not the right one. I was afraid that he wasn't going to be a good priest. I was afraid of what my life might be like because he was something so utterly different than anyone I had ever met. There was no context to even put him into.
Yeah.
Because he was, I even now I struggle to find words. He was just otherworldly.
His force of nature.
Yeah. And I was, oh my gosh. And it was volatile sometimes. We fought. I fought. I fought like crazy with him all the time. But I couldn't stand to be apart from him. It was like this bizarre magnetism. Like we loved and hated to be together.
Yeah.
Now, again, looking back, I totally see what it was. He was not like my dad. And, and this was something that I was going to spend my whole life struggling to overcome, that it was okay to be who I am, and that there was more to life than just scholarly wisdom and cerebral knowledge. So I said yes. And right up until the time I walked up the aisle to the holy altar with my husband, I was scared to death that I was making the wrong decision. But I remember the prayer in my heart. God, you brought me to this place. You led me here thus far. I trust that you are going to lead me through this. And whatever it is, you are in our midst. And probably the most powerful commitment that he and I have made is that it's not to each other, it's to our commitment to Christ. And
that is very, 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 very powerful. Would you repeat that again? Because I think it's critically important that people understand that, because as wonderful and glorious as we should celebrate a happily married couple and whatnot, you just said something that said your eyes may have been looking at each other, but they were focused on a different cause, a source, a destination. Would you please repeat that? Because that's a critical message.
Well, if I can remember what I said.
Say it in new words. It's really powerful.
It was that, our commitment to each other was important, but not nearly as important as our commitment to Christ. That as long as he was in our midst, as long as there were three of us present, that this marriage would prosper. And I'm telling you, that has been our saving grace, because there have been really hard times, like every marriage has. Marriage is not easy for anybody.
Not for the faint of heart, that's for sure.
It is not for the wimps. But, I had that to remind myself that, there were times when, honestly, I was ready to walk in my immaturity. It was purely my immaturity. I was ready to walk out the door, and I said, get a hold of yourself. Where are you going to go? Where is it going to be different? Whatever problems you have, you're taking them with you. So stay and work them out. And by the grace of God, we did. And, we chuckle because for this past year, we have been together morning, noon, and night. And most couples probably would have killed each other by now.
Amen.
But we're so happy to be together. We still have differences of opinion and thought, and but it's okay. We just kind of make faces at each other and walk away, and then come back and laugh at each other.
Yeah, I think there's a level of maturity that comes with all of this. I'm gonna get real personal here for just a second, because this has got to be when you said chuckle, something popped in my head. I mean, for the 40 years that I was a practicing lawyer, I had short cropped hair, no beard, the kind of professional look. And then I jokingly said once I was going to get the COVID vaccine. Until I got the COVID vaccine, I'd let my hair grow and my beard grow. And then when I got it, my wife looked at me and said, hey, I really kind of like that fuzzy look that you have now. And it kind of brought us back to the 1970s when we first met. And, as we always say, if mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy. So now I've got this shaggy hairdo and this beard, which is very foreign to me. I blew Father George's mind when he first saw me, when we first started the interview, because he's used to seeing that close crop thing. But all of that is put in context because Father George has this ZZ Top beard thing going on. And for as long as I've seen photographs of him early on when it was a lot more short crop, but everything that I have always seen has always had that distinctive character building, beautiful beard of his. So here's my question to you. Has he done that because you've told him to do it, like I'm doing for my wife? Or have you threatened to secretly sneak in there sometimes with some scissors and cut it and trim it or whatnot? So let's talk about the beard, because in addition to the loving guy, we all see the beard.
Well, I have to just stick a funny in here for a moment. He loves to tell people that he's in love with his barber, which, kind of people. But I do his hair. So well, now my kids are grown. They go get their own haircuts, but I used to cut everybody's hair.
Okay.
So Father George was someone to be reckoned with when we were at school. And I think he gave you a little sense of his playfulness and his maybe lack of commitment. You know, he expressed it by means of, you know, his grades and all. But he was just always trying new things. So hairstyles are probably my fondest memories of him, because every year, every semester even, he had a different one. He had the long sideburns, you know, that come down here.
Lamb chops.
He had a Fu Manchu. He had an afro. He had the beard. He had no beard, no hair. You know, any combination of things he could come up with. And but when we got married and he was ordained, and this is a little aside from the hairstyles.
Yeah, it's okay.
I know the man that I experienced at Hellenic College and Holy Cross. I know the man that I married. But the man that was ordained was gifted with grace. And there is a huge difference in the two. Yeah. The change in him is remarkable. He's still the same man when he is at home, when he is, you know, with his family, with his friends, alone with me. What you see is what you get. He is always, always that authentic person. But there is something that happens when he is in the role of a priest, and the grace. And I don't want to say that it's completely different, because there's grace with him even when he's not wearing his robe.
Sure.
But there is a huge difference, and I welcome that. Early in our marriage, we became acquainted with the monastery. The first Father Ephrem monastery was established here outside of Pittsburgh. And this was our first exposure to monasticism. He had never been to Mount Athos. We had never, you know, had the experience of monastic life other than what you read in books.
Right.
And we both had already felt a traditionalism within us, that we wanted to be fully Orthodox, fully faithful, and whatever that means. So, you know, wearing the traditional robe was part of that. You know, sort of opting out of the suit and collar style, right, and espousing the traditional robe and the hair. And in the beginning, he had a long kotso as well. And the only reason he had to cut that was because his scalp, his hair is so thick that his scalp couldn't breathe.
Oh,
and
wow.
So
oh, wow.
It became infected.
Yeah, that's...
So, yeah. So I'm cool with the beard growing long.
You're cool with the beard, huh?
Yeah, and it's way longer than it looks, but it's so curly that
it kind of comes back at, well, it is a distinctive look. It's like, you know, you can see like a clergy laird or whatnot. You see all this massive humanity of clergy coming at you, and he's not a small guy, never was. But I mean, when you see him, you can pick him out of the lineup without any hesitation. I mean, thank God he is a man of God, because if he ever committed a crime, the lineup would be very easy to do. They'd spot him right away. You know, that's he's a good one to pick out.
And they do. In fact, I would remind him when he was younger, like, you're a priest. you can't take off your robe and put on your robe. And please don't misunderstand. It's not that I think the robe makes or breaks the man. That's farthest from it. But I think what I was trying to encourage him with is that to remind him that everyone who looks at him will see Christ.
They see that, right?
And so, what image do we want to project to others? And we all need to think about that. Every one of us represents Christ, and we may be the only Bible that anyone ever reads. So, how do we want to mentor people? Because whatever we say, whatever we do, people are watching us, listening to us. Our children, they don't hear what we say, they see what we do.
Right.
And
the message that you just delivered was probably one of the most powerful homilies that I wish everybody would listen to. And that is that in everything we do, we represent our Lord and Savior. And in the way we interact with people, the way we and the way we look, of course, is a piece of that. But I think recognizing that we are always living icons is the message that you're delivering and reminding him. And frankly, thankfully, and I thank you for this, reminding each and every one of us, because that's a powerful message. So your education degree is paying off, because here you are, using it very effectively to help us.
Well, I mean, this is something that I think has been really, really important to me, and I know it's important to him as well. But as I've struggled to come into who I am and who I'm created to be, and who God made me and what he expects from me, I want nothing more than to be authentic. And so my adult life has been spent questioning every single little thing that comes to me. When sometimes, even still, I catch little phrases that we say that are just, they're just everyday phrases. And I'll stop and I'll think, what does that really mean? Where does that come from? Why do we say that? And then I make a choice. Do I keep it or do I reject it? And, there we come back again to that theme of choosing. Every step we take is a choice. Whether we go forward, whether we go backward, whether we stand still, whether we go right, whether we go left, we make a choice.
Yeah.
And I want that choice to be Christ. So I didn't mean to interrupt you.
It makes sense, Presvytera, because the catalytic moment for you was the word and then a bumper sticker that said, "Follow me." And if you accept that as a catalytic moment, then you always are focusing on where do I go to follow, right? Where do I go to follow the Lord? And that's been an incredible part of your journey, your shared journey with Father George. So
and that's,
share with us.
That's an interesting comment, though. Where do I go to follow him? And that thought has been in my head for many years and has caused a lot of anxiety for me. And what he has taught me is that I don't need to go anywhere. I just need to be present, and I need to make that choice. When, I was going to say when we started having children, but it goes back a little bit before this. We of course wanted to have children, and when we became expecting parents, we were still at seminary, and our dear friends threw a baby shower for us, and it was a couple's shower. So my husband, or my fiance at the time, was present, And it was just all of our dearest friends from seminary who, what a community that we had and have continued to have, because they're still our closest friends. So we arrive at Helene and Jerry Hall's apartment, and she says they had, I can't remember if they had 2 kids then or just one. But anyway, we come to the door and she says, "Oh my gosh, I hope everybody has had chicken pox, because Mark came down with chicken pox yesterday, but don't worry, we've isolated him in the back room and he's not coming out, and we cleaned everything." So everybody's laughing and saying, "Oh yeah, we had chicken pox. Remember, we used to have parties." And anyway,
yeah, right.
My Father George is like straight-faced, and he's like, "I've never had chicken pox."
Uh-oh.
And we're like, "Oh my gosh."
Really?
So, yeah. So we just, we continued with the party. We had a great time. He came down with chicken pox.
There you go.
But it wasn't just a case of chicken pox. It was a very serious degree of it.
Oh,
And
really?
This is 1984. It's spring. My senior year. May is my graduation, and the week after graduation is our wedding. I've been sewing my wedding dress in one of the dorm rooms. I designed it and
Wow.
sewed it from scratch, using my fashion designing skills that I never got to develop. Anyway, so it's a couple weeks before graduation, and he comes down with a very, very serious case of chickenpox. So bad, his entire body was covered, and he had 104-degree temperature.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
And it was just severe. He couldn't even put clothes on. So that Sunday of graduation weekend, he still has not been able to get out of bed. He missed my graduation. The doctor has told him, "You're not going to be able to fly. You're not going to, you're probably going to have to postpone your wedding. And worse than that, it's very likely that you will be sterile, because when adults get chicken pox, especially at this severe state," he said, it's very likely. So that Sunday of graduation, Father Calivas was serving the liturgy, and he took the chalice after communion with all the acolytes, fully vested, carried the chalice up to my husband's dorm room.
Oh my gosh.
Communed him.
Mm-hmm.
And the fever left him immediately, and he was healed.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
And let's just say that again. He was healed, receiving the body and blood of Christ. Let's not go crazy with, this pandemic fear that we're going to get sick from coming to the chalice.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we go forward, and our daughter was born at that time. We move on. We don't have any plans of how many children we're going to have. We committed our hearts to Christ with one mind, that we wanted to allow him to bless us as he saw fit to bless us. And again, I don't know what that means. Right. I just said yes.
Yeah.
And I said yes with a lot of fear. I've got to say that out loud, because I know there are going to be a lot of women listening to this, and I've counseled many young moms with this same over this same subject. We want to believe that we have the choice to decide how many kids we're going to have and what our lives are going to look like. And we certainly do make choices, but God is the one who blesses. And there are so many who wish to have children and cannot conceive. Yeah. And there are so many others who conceive and choose to end that life. And we need to see this blessing as a blessing, that it is not our choice, that it's something that God gives us, and it's a great and holy and fearful responsibility that we are given. So this is how we approached the topic of childbearing. And somewhere, I can't remember what year it was, but we probably had about 3 kids at this time. And my husband made his first trip to Mount Athos. And he had a beautiful experience and met so many wonderful elders. And as he was leaving, this particular elder gave him a blessing and put in his hand some little crosses. And he said, "Here, these are for your children." So my husband opens his hand, and there are 9 crosses in his hand. And he's like, "Yaranda, I only have 3 kids."
Yeah, right.
And the Yaranda closes his hand and he says, "Take them. These are for your children." And we conceived 9 children. We lost 2.
Oh my gosh.
In miscarriage.
Oh,
but again,
my gosh.
this is the hindsight. This is not, like we never said, okay, let's try for one more so we can make the 9. Again, honestly, those crosses were put to the side in a drawer and forgotten for many, many years. And it wasn't until they were found and until we had already, conceived all of our children that we realized God's hand in this. It was a miracle that we had children at all.
Right.
And
this is the powerful testament of what happens when you say yes to the instructions, "Follow me," right? I mean, because a lot of people hear it either as directly as you did or metaphorically, and choose to push back on it, say, "Not yet, not now, not till some other day in the future," right? And oftentimes it's out of fear, the same fear you felt. There's no question about that. I mean, we all have fear of the unknown and uncertainty and things of that nature. And there's a certain amount of fear, I'm sure, that you confront now. But for you to have had the faith that you did and to see the miracles along the way, from the communion that actually heals his serious illness to the 9 crosses, that's really incredible, powerful testimony. I thank you for sharing that. That I know is a very personal thing to share.
Yes, it is.
And speaking of personal things to share, and you don't have to, but what are some of Father George's most endearing or cute or lovable quirks or habits? I mean, what makes you chuckle when he does them?
Oh my gosh. That's really hard to say because, I mean, he's just a character all the time, and it probably has. I've come to appreciate it and really, really love it as of late. But our early years, I was so embarrassed. I would roll my eyes. I would think, "Oh my gosh, get serious! Like this is, But now I see, like what levity he brings to the table and to the room, that he puts people at ease.
Absolutely.
And I don't know. I mean, I can't really answer that question. Nothing particular is coming to my mind.
Okay. Well, when you marry someone like him who is so full of life and joy and joking and teasing and stuff like that, I'm sure there's one a minute or one an hour or one 2 or 3 a day kind of thing. And if you kept track of them, you'd spend all your time keeping track of them instead of enjoying the moments with them. So now earlier, if you were listening to him, I got him to confess what professional wrestling name he would have used had he pursued down the path of wrestling humans as opposed to wrestling for the Lord, which is the path that he did choose. So do you have any pet names for him that you want to share, or that you want to disclose of,
Yeah, actually, there is one, and he didn't bring it up, and I can't remember the context out of which it grew, but he was also known as the masked kefte, the masked meatball.
Wait a minute, really? Wait, how early was this memory?
I don't know. It might have been from like college days. So, but he also. So he played football in high school, but was injured, and so he I don't even know anything about football, so I can't even tell you what he did. But his jersey was 00, and so one of my pet names for him is my hero 00.
That's cute.
Which, yeah. And I like to call him Habibi.
Habibi?
Habibi, my love from the Arabic.
Right.
And actually, this one is more his name for me. But so people would always ask us, like, do you call him Father George at home? No. But
come on.
You have to develop some names, and within the context of the public, and our life has been extremely public. So
yeah,
I don't like to call him Father George all the time. So sometimes I call him Habibi or Abuna, which is the Arabic also for father. And then he calls me Bubuna.
Oh, okay. There you go.
Abuna and Bubuna, which in Greek means an idiot, stupid.
Well, it's not quite that harsh.
He wanted to have the license plates, those vanity plates, for each of us, Abuna and Bubuna.
Now that would be funny. Or at least we get you some bumper stickers, right? We can get you bumper stickers and put them on your car. All right, we're making a note of that. So all of you that are listening over here, you now know what your next gift is for Father and Prez. See, this is what happens when you disclose things. I can't imagine the times that I have spent with him. We usually, after we have the fun stuff, we're usually talking about a church issue or a church problem or a church opportunity or something we need to do in church world or something of that nature. And I oftentimes reflect after the conversation a question that he asked, or the way he put something, which was a very gentle way in which he was trying to teach me something or tell me something or kind of guide me in a direction that I was not going, without saying, no, you idiot, you're going in the wrong direction, look over here, right? So there's a subtlety to his teaching that is really powerful in some ways. So as I was thinking about that, I'm kind of wondering, what are some of the most memorable things that he has taught you that you want to share?
Well, I am amazed more than ever as I'm experiencing this year of, I don't even want to call it a year of illness. It's been a year of us suspended in this holy place.
Really?
Yeah. It defies all logic. But even my kumbara had come and stayed with us and made mention as we were driving around and taking care of some of the things that needed to be done to prepare for the future. She said, it's very strange. It's like it's almost like we're living in this little bubble. And I said, yeah, that's exactly it. We are in this holy space that seems almost untouched by everything going on around us. And
Mm-hmm.
we are surrounded literally by so great a cloud of witnesses that we're not
Yeah.
even touching the ground. I don't know how to put into words what that feels like.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, it's given me a lot of reflection time, which I'm so grateful for, because one of the things that he's been working on me for all of our life is gratitude.
Yeah.
To be thankful, to be grateful for everything. And I'd say, honey, I'm very grateful for everything, but I don't have time. I don't have time to, you know, to sit and contemplate the, you know, the
Right.
wonders of the earth like you do.
Yeah.
And, you know, because of course my Martha perspective is that
Right.
he's sitting there at the Lord's feet and everything is wonderful for him while I'm racing here and racing there and feeding the kids and washing the clothes and cutting the hair and teaching the lessons. And, you know, I would hear him, and I would say to myself, like, if I only had a moment
Mm-hmm.
to just contemplate on whatever has just happened, whatever wonderful thing has just happened, if I had a moment after it to just say, wow, think of that. Look at how wonderful that is. Oh, thank you, God.
Right.
But I don't. Like, I'm running off because the next thing's happening and the next thing and the next thing. Well, the point is, though, that he has washed that thought over me again and again so that I'm aware of it. And that is what has been bubbling up now that we have this time of tension and trial and
Uncertainty.
uncertainty. Exactly. That I am filled with nothing but gratitude. There is just literally no room for anything but gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm grateful for that. And the other really huge thing that he has taught me is to get out of my head and get into my heart.
Right. Yep.
And that when you live from your heart, when you live with your hands wide open and your heart wide open, you know, I don't know, where are my hands here? When your hands are
Yeah.
open like this, you
Right.
know, you are able to both give and receive.
Right.
But when your hands are closed, you can neither give nor receive. You know, and so this is a huge part of our stewardship, that we live with our hearts wide open and get out of our heads. Because honestly, nothing about my life makes sense. If I were to, you know, put it all down on paper and take it to a university, none of it makes sense. But all of it makes sense in God's holy wisdom.
Yeah, I mean, there's a perfect logic to it. You know, you used a phrase earlier, and I don't know if this is a phrase that you've been latching on to, but it created this powerful moment when I thought about it, when you said the moment after. And that got me thinking about all the times after any experience, it is that immediate moment after the experience, good, bad, or indifferent, that we become the most reflective, the most living in the moment, because we're just actually there contemplating what's going on. And to think that your moment after has been now extended for an extended period of time has probably given you even much greater and deeper insights in all the preceding moments, right? I mean, because it's not just like you're replaying a tape over 40 years or playing a tape of 40 years, that you can actually extract very specific emotions from specific moments after. And then the consequence of that you're feeling now is one of gratitude. and how powerful it is that, again, as part of God's great plan that makes perfect sense, just not to us mere mortals, that he's giving you this moment after, even though it's a moment in time, to reflect back and look back at all of those incredible joyous moments and the opportunity to give and the joy that has given you both.
Thank you,
I
Bill.
just, I,
that really like put another little piece in there for me. I appreciate that.
Well,
I've been so worried all these years. I'm in my head. I'm trying to make sure I'm doing this and doing that, and even more so that I'm doing it right.
Right.
I'm getting it all right, because because I'm so attuned to the idea that whatever you give your children in the first 5 years of their lives shapes them forever.
Mm-hmm.
The scriptures tell us, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it.
Right.
It goes both ways.
Yeah.
It goes both ways. Whatever you train up your child, he will not depart from it. So the negative feedback that I got, and God forgive my parents, God forgive me as a parent.
Right.
I've realized now at this stage, we all do the very best we can, and God help us. We make hundreds of mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
We just do. We make mistakes. We don't know any better, and we do the best that we can. But I learned that I wasn't good enough, and that I needed to keep trying harder and harder and get smarter and smarter. And no matter what I did, it was never enough. And George has been able to teach me that I am enough.
Yeah.
That it's just, like surrendering all of that pain, all of that struggle, all of that cerebral mess, just surrendering it to the feet of Christ and let him guide you.
Right.
I want to share another little story, just because it keeps coming back to me lately of what it means to live in Christ and to fully trust. And this is just one of the hundreds, maybe thousands of things I've experienced with my husband like this. So we were expecting our sixth child, and we lived in a small 3-bedroom house with 1 bathroom.
There you go. That's intimate, right?
Yes. 5 kids, the 2 of us, and it was Christmas, just before Christmas, and we get a call from Philadelphia that we need to come get my mother-in-law, that she's not doing well. She doesn't know who she is or where she is. And so we dropped everything and we ran and picked her up and brought her home to live with us. And, it was not even a question that she would live with us. Well, I'm looking around the house and I'm like, there isn't a spot we can even put her. We had her on the sofa. And so we started looking for a new home right away. And financially, we were not able to do that. We hadn't any savings. And, it was, we're at that point, we're still a big family, and we live pretty much hand to mouth. And so we just put it to prayer, and we said, God is going to provide something. And we asked each of the children to write down on a piece of paper all the things that they would like in a new house, and that we would ask God if it's His will to bless that for them, that they would have these things that they thought were important. So we start looking and looking. We wanted something that had a mother-in-law suite or whatever. And there was nothing in our price range. There was nothing. So we came to the last house that our realtor had available, and it just wasn't it. And I was crestfallen. You know, I'm pregnant. I'm about to. I was what, 7 months pregnant at that time.
Oh yeah. There's all kinds of things going on inside of you, right? I mean,
yeah. I mean, it's imminent, and I need my space to be, fixed and ready, and mother-in-law in her place. And
the nest has to be fully set up.
Yeah. So our realtor happened to be a good friend, and she said, all right, listen, Dianthe, you're going straight home after this. You're not going to go looking for houses on the road. She said, I promise you, I will find you a house. You just have to be patient. And she said this out of the experience that I would call her every other day, look up this house. And it was invariably twice our budget, if not more. I had expensive taste. So we left the realtor, we left that last house, and George and I sat and we said a prayer, and he said, look, God has always provided everything that we need. And this is not going to be any different. So we're just going to trust him. And he said, and I know that when we see that house, we will know it without a doubt. So we said, okay. And, we moved on. So we start driving down the road, and we come to this street that we had never been on before. And simultaneously, we both said, let's go down here. And so we turned down this street because we're curious to see where it's going to take us. And up ahead, there's a for sale sign on the left. And he turns to me and he says, should we stop and look? And we giggled over it, because Cindy had just told us, don't
go home. That. Right. Yeah.
So it's winter time, so all the trees are bare. And he stops in front of this house, and it's got a long gravel driveway. If it were not wintertime, you would not see the house from the road.
Okay.
But here's this beautiful house up on the hill, nested in the woods. And he stops and he says, that's the house. Oh. Yeah, that's exactly what I did. Like,
you gotta be kidding me, you said, right?
Why would you torment me like this?
Yeah.
We just said, and he says, very seriously, he says, no, that's the house. I know that's the house. So we called Cindy up, and she was like, are you kidding me? Like, it hasn't even been 5 minutes. Yeah. And he said, I know, just look it up and call us back. So we chose to go out to eat so we'd have some private time and not have to, deal with the kids right away and wait for her call. And she called back and she said, I don't understand. She said, it's everything that you've asked for, and it's just a little bit outside your price range. I don't know why it didn't come up before.
Yeah.
And she said, do you want to see it? And he said, yeah. And so in an hour, we walked into this house and bought it. Just like that. It was, and ironically, it was nothing like what I was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
But as we reflected later, it had every single thing that the children had prayed for.
Mm-hmm.
Every single thing. Even just mundane, ridiculous little things. Except, then my oldest pointed out, everything except my most important thing. I wanted horses. And I was like,
okay, all right.
Yeah. I was like,
yes,
I love
we always have one
anyway.
of those kids, right? That's why you pick up the phone and you call Nick Lucian and you say, I'm sending the kids over to your house. Take care of them, right?
But
what a story.
After we moved into the house, it was springtime, so we had the windows open, and what do I hear? I hear horses neighing.
No, no,
Yeah,
no.
yeah, there's a
No,
horse
you're
farm
kidding me.
right across the street.
Oh,
Yeah.
my Lord in heaven. That,
So,
you know,
and thank you, Jesus. I didn't have to care for them.
yeah, absolutely. Let it, it's like grandkids. Somebody else is taking care of them for you, right? That is just, see, this is yet another testament. This is why when you said early on you had no clue and you were just going through the motions, and Father said a very similar thing when he and I were talking. I think it's very clear from y'all's story that if we really do have faith, if we really do say that we will follow the Lord, that he will guide us. So not every step, and there's going to be some missteps, and there's going to be some things that you say or do that fusses and things of that nature that you experienced along your life. But there's this overarching thing that when you then sit in what you call the moment after and look back at it, you kind of go, and see, Prez, that's really kind of where I've been all along with trying to pursue down this notion of a stewardship calling, that, in the rear view mirror, everything is clear. But when we're looking ahead, sometimes we can only see as far as we can see. And I think that you all are at a very different point in the calling of your lives and in the ministry of your lives, both to each other and to the faithful that know you and love you and the people around you. And I'm hoping through this dialogue that we're having together for others who may never know you in person, but who may resonate with your experience and your story and your life and say, that could have been me. Maybe it is me. And I just have to have faith and follow the Lord.
Bill,
and I think
nothing that we have belongs to us. Nothing.
Amen, sister. Amen.
Are you, are you a lawyer? Are you a doctor? Are you a mother? Whatever gift you have, whatever you bring to the table, that's not even yours. You've made a choice to develop the talents that God has given you. And that's all we can do. We think that we can control everything, and we want to. It's our nature, perhaps, but our fallen nature, excuse me.
Exactly, yeah, but that's okay. That's our nature.
I lost my train of thought.
No, this notion of control, this sense that we think we're in control when in fact the Lord's, right?
Yeah, but fear is very real. I mean, we're experiencing it this past year with COVID. I mean, that's like the prime example of fear. But we all experience fear to different degrees over different things. I mean, I've always considered myself fearless. Like, I can't think of anything I'm afraid of. I'm not afraid of heights. I want to go skydiving. I've gone skiing and high diving and, whatever I could to take chances and experience nature and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So I never thought I had fears, but there are other fears that God has shown me are there. And what it really amounts to is lack of trust. Yeah. We fear when we don't trust. And this was another beautiful thing, little vignette that my husband and I had. He grew up in inner city Philly, and I grew up in Cleveland in a beautiful, wealthy neighborhood with lots of grass and privacy. And when we started dating, we would go out and he'd look at the skyline and he'd say, "Oh, look at that. Isn't that beautiful?" And I'd like, "No, it's all cement. It's all,"
right.
And then we'd drive in the country and I'd say, "Oh, look at this. Look at the ocean and look at the trees." And he's like, "There's nothing here." And so it took us a long time to sort of appreciate each other's background and the things that we found beautiful. But once we had kids, we started taking them on hikes in the woods. And this was really, because that's where when I'm in nature, I am just so happy. Alive. I feel really connected and alive. And that was tough for him. But he did it. He would come along with us, and he would share with me, I'm afraid this isn't comfortable for me.
Yeah.
And I'd say, okay, take my hand, like silly things, like, and forgive me, nothing is silly. So I shouldn't refer to it that way, but I thought it was silly, having to walk over a log, or, to step on a stone in a creek.
Yeah.
That's not even deep. It's not like you're going to drown. And he was afraid. And I would say, take my hand and I'll hold you and we'll go together. And he would do it without hesitation. He was petrified, and without hesitation, he'd take my hand and he would walk over it. And then he started looking up and appreciating how beautiful the space was that we were in. And anyway, this wasn't about me and anything that I did, but we've been able to sort of help each other with these things that we've got fear over one thing or another, but trust is the answer. And in trusting God, like during this very challenging year where I am facing saying goodbye to my husband, who is my best friend and my whole world, I am choosing trust. I am choosing to believe that God knows better, that he is continuing to paint a picture for my life and for my husband's life. And, when I bring to him my fear, like, what am I going to do when you're gone? How am I going to, like, he's like my memory. He remembers all of the beautiful things that have happened in our lives, and he remembers people's names, and he remembers just all the things that I don't. Which feels like quite a lot to me. Again, because in my head, I think that I have been so busy, and I call busy a 4-letter word.
Yeah, it is.
But he keeps reminding me, be patient. God will be there. Because our story as husband and wife is one of a journey towards salvation. It's not about the two of us forever and ever. Our whole purpose is to help each other towards salvation. So my heart and my mind has been turned now to, how can I help him let go? How can I be present for him and help him through his fear of making this transition, which is what we've worked our entire lives for. We love the Lord and we want to live forever in eternity with him. And there's a process. This is something that most of us never have the opportunity to think about, that we need to let go. We need to let go of this world. And he loves to tell everyone, if you die before you die, when you die, you will not die. Right? So that dying means just letting go of the world and all the things that we think are so important here, and latch on to the things that are eternal.
And I think as you reflect back on the gift, as horrible as it is to say this, the gift of so many moments after that you are now experiencing and celebrating and looking back at and replaying tapes of and sharing together, you not only understand that you were both called on a journey to serve the Lord, but you were both called on a journey to serve each other and your children and your family and your community and all saints and everybody extended beyond that. And when we count, everybody's got this counting thing going on, right? So they count the number of times the words "fear not" are used in the gospel. And I've heard that it's as many as 365. So it's one for every day of the year, fear not, fear not, fear not. But the point you made, Pres, which is so powerful, and I don't want anybody to miss it, is that to overcome the fear, you have to have trust that there is something better on the other side of the fear. And the second point you made, which is Father George's point, which is why it's so beautiful that they fit together, is that you will really never overcome that fear as long as you allow the neocortex of your brain, our human Homo sapien brain, to be playing all those scenarios of what if, just like you taught him, stop worrying about the slippery rock we're going to walk through on this stream and just have faith on the other end. So you were reminding Father George of the message that he was reminding you, that ultimately our Lord gave us, when he said in John 13:34, look, this is simple commandment, folks. Just love. Just love. If you just love, everything else is going to take care of itself. Won't always be perfect, won't always be nice, won't always be comfortable, but it's all going to work out if you just love. And I think you all in this seemingly endless moment after are sharing that love and sharing that message. And through this testimony, you are now sharing it with others. And in that context, we owe you all yet another debt of gratitude, that you would be as vulnerable and open and caring and loving and willing to share such beautiful moments and beautiful sentiments, and most importantly, a Christ-centered, faith-driven, purposeful life of love. And we thank you for that. But as always,
have to appreciate how very difficult it is, mostly for me. I'm a very private person, and I'm the behind the scenes kind of person. And all this public attention is difficult for me. Right. But I'm glimpsing a bigger picture.
Yeah.
And so I'm again choosing to just go with it and trust that God has a plan.
That's what he meant when he told you, follow me. That's what he meant, right? All right. As always, we always provide the last word for the woman in the room. So as I end this segment, thanking you so from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of everybody who will learn, listen, and love this message, any final thoughts, any final words, anything you want to end us with?
Father George and I are not exceptional people. We are everyday, ordinary people like every one of you. And the whole idea of all this attention, again, is it's difficult. It's difficult for my husband to hear, and it's not. Let me say, it's not something comfortable, and it's not something profitable to his soul to hear what a great man, what a godly man, it's the kind of stuff that puffs up a soul. And he is, we are struggling through that, and want everyone to know that it's just purely love that we want to share, that there's no, I don't even have the words to share what I'm feeling right now. If anything good has been done, if anything profitable has been learned, may everyone see Christ and not see Dianthe and George.
Well, you have both manifested the light of the world in your words, in your actions, and in your deeds. And so anybody who's paying attention in looking at you and looking at Father George can only see Christ, can only see the light of the world. And in so doing, you too have fulfilled yet another personal calling. So now we just end by knowing that you are in our thoughts and prayers just for the moment and the moment that follows, and ultimately the moment after. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.